switched to church organ for that one song and that you need a lot of sustain and play that.
Oh yeah, there we go. There we go. Okay, yeah, I can do that.
For Halloween.
Yeah, I know that one. I'll do it.
I think I need to hire.
You don't have to give me any encouragement. But we need a better church organ sound than that. There we go.
He's making a way for himself this morning.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't think I'm gonna play that because it's just not gonna do the.
It's okay to sleep, just not to sleep.
Yeah.
The whole piece is pedaling.
Yeah, but.
She is.
17
I have another pedal at home we can try. It's for next week, but
Okay,
that one was the better one.
yeah.
So
Can you get a new cord on it?
Started it from my son.
Or do you have to get a whole new pedal?
I don't know. I could take a look at it and see
Yeah.
how hard it is. 'Cause
Yeah.
I've done some soldering in my day. So
Didn't go.
Yeah.
Just actually goes with you.
Look at, but it needs the organ. That's, yeah.
But even on that
You'd
one
be
lock
surprised
thing, you
how
still need a
some of
pedal
them
when you get down
clutch.
here, you know.
You know, yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard on a piano player.
It's the price.
Well, that was beautiful.
He's got some really nice stuff back.
Seems
But,
like
yeah.
you show me after.
Oh. So, well, he first shall I ring the bell? Alpaca sweaters, which Sounds good to me. they're so warm that you'll feel, you know, there's,
I will go home.
you wear them on days when it's sweating, normally wouldn't be sufficient, but they're so warm.
We have to go to.
And then, but my daughter and I love the alpaca store. You know, it's all color.
Right?
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Bryan. For those that may not know me, my pronouns are he, him. We are glad that you all are here. Whether you're here in person or online, we are so glad that you've come to join us. Today we are going to be celebrating it's basically, I don't like to call it a sermon and I don't like to call sermon series, but even so, this is part one of a two-series kind of presentation. Today we're going to talk about Halloween, the different earth-based traditions that really concern things like the thinner veil between the living and the dead. And then next Sunday, which is the Sunday where many churches, most churches don't celebrate that today, but next Sunday, most churches in the Protestant tradition will be celebrating All Saints' Day, as well as in the Roman Catholic tradition. And so that'll be kind of part two. But today is the celebration of what we usually call All Souls' Day, which is Halloween. And All Saints' Day is on November the 1st. And since they land in the middle of the week or towards the end of next week, we're going to just split it apart. So Our first Friday evening PM service, PM stands not just for evening, but for poetry and music. These are once a month, Friday services, the third Fridays of the month, where we're going to continue this exploration of earth-based spirituality and traditions through art, through music, through poetry. It'll be a lot less formal of a service and more of an experiential one. In fact, Chuck and the rest of us that are working on these services are planning in January to have one where we get together and write a piece of music as part of the experience. So I would invite everybody to come and join us for that one. And that's November the 15th. I actually wrote the dates down this time. Hey, improvement, continuous improvement. All right, any more announcements from anyone that you'd like to share?
So we still have a storage shed, okay? And there's a few things left in there, I think. I would like to stop paying for it because there's a few things that could be, I don't think there's much in there, right, Jim? But if anybody has stuff in there that they want out, we're gonna talk about it after service, and it's possible we could go over there and clean the whole thing out, and then we don't have to pay this week for the next month, so. Yeah, just let me know after the service.
Sounds good. I have an update from Moose Jaw about the Get Out the Vote. They have a few more trainings this week. You can join them in person or online to get the message out to the folks that we sent the postcards to. You can do it on your computer, through a text, or through your phone, and they walk you through the very simple steps of it. So I have that information here. The place that they're doing it in person is called Rafiki Coffee in St. Paul on Fairview. It's just near 94 and Snelling. And yeah, there's one every single day this week through Friday. So we're hoping to get everybody's involved in one of these trainings if you haven't already. But they have all the information about them that I have here, and I can send you the email or I can show it to you today. Just let me know if you're interested.
I'll intersperse a few other things that I have written in here, and then solicit any more announcements that you might have before we start the service proper. One is just for anybody who's new or doesn't know, we don't take an offering during the service. We have a plate in the back if you'd like to give, and there are also a couple of ways that you can give on our website. So we're not the pushy money people. So anyway, it's there, and we would really appreciate your support if you feel moved to do so. And also, I wanted to just kind of bring up the winter solstice service. Last year it was very well attended, and we had a lot of positive comments for the things that we got together. So that is scheduled for December the 20th, which is the third Friday in December. And what I'm really doing is not only putting that on your radar screen, because that tends to be a really nice event for us as a community, but also if you'd like to participate by contributing music, or if you'd like to do a reading, because we basically do instead of a festival of lessons and carols, we do a festival of readings and candle lighting and things like that. So if you'd like to participate in some way, please feel free to see me or Kathleen, or if you're in the music line, Kathleen or Suki or Chuck could help you out with that. But we'd love to have you participate. All right, anything else?
Yeah, I forgot one.
Oh, go ahead.
Every county is looking for volunteers in the post-election review process because each county selects 2 precincts randomly to hand count all the ballots, and they have to have public observers. So if you're interested in that, see me too, and I can get you connected with the people that want.
I've done
Or
that,
help.
it's really simple, and you can
Yeah.
barely even see the ballots.
It's really
You
cool.
know,
Yeah,
so-
and you have to be available during the week, during the day, on November 11th through the 19th.
Awesome, thank you.
But not every day. You can
No,
do
just-
a day.
yeah.
Anything else? Okay, well with that, what I would invite you to do is to take a deep, slow, gentle breath, maybe a couple, depending on where you are in life today, and try to separate yourself from the chaos that tends to be all around us, and come together in this time of fellowship and reflection and meditate on this prelude as we begin our worship service.
I'm sorry to say that the pedal is not working, so what I was going to play, I'm not going to play. So, it's gonna be different. Was it? See, I have no pedal, so now this is where I need the pedal. There.
It was still very nice.
It's very nice. It really does set the tone for what we're talking about. So the Spirit was with us. As frustrating as it is, I know. I would like to invite you now to join us in the opening words. Please, we remain seated so that everybody can see the screen. This is something that I adapted from a reading called This Sacred Thread by Heather Janones, who is a up-and-coming Unitarian Universalist minister. They once dwelled among us, the people of memory, they who knew us, they who taught us, they who heard us, they who loved us.
They touched our lives time and again, through their presence and their absence, through familiar scents and favorite songs.
Through old stories and renewed sorrow, as the earth turns and leaves fall, we reach back to renew the bonds between us.
With hearts and hands open, we hold on to love, ever stronger than death.
We reach back in gratitude and understanding. Without our time together, the pain and the joy, we would never be who we are today. We would have little to pass on ourselves.
Without fear, with thanksgiving, and with hope for all that awaits, we remember those who have gone before. We honor the circle of life and death, and our place within this sacred thread.
Therefore, in the spirit of remembering and honoring, we light this chalice together and say,
May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers, to heal with love, to help with compassion, to bless with joy, to serve you, Spirit of freedom, in the fullness of community.
And now let us join together in our opening hymn and rise as we are able. It is number 360, 360.
Come and step inside. May our
This is the last Sunday for this year for LGBTQIA plus History Month. That's the month of October. And so in that spirit, our beloved community moment centers around members of the LGBTQ community. And so this time during the service, we do take a moment to stop and pause and take some honor and give memory and heed and all of that to a member of what we would consider our broader beloved community. At this time during our service, we're going to pause today to honor one of our congregation's commitments to the marginalized, the oppressed, and otherwise disenfranchised. This week, we take time to proclaim that our principles and values to unequivocally commit our faith to honor and celebrate the full spectrum of gender identity and expression. Being transgender or identifying with any gender other than the one assigned at birth is a beautiful and divine manifestation of humanity, as is being intersex or having sex characteristics that vary from what is considered to be typical. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm the inherent worthiness and dignity of each person as a core principle. The ability to live ever more authentically as one's true self is central to the lifelong journey towards spiritual fulfillment. We hereby pledge our collective faithful efforts to the full affirmation and celebration of transgender, non-binary, intersex, and gender diverse people within our congregations and the wider community, and uphold this commitment as a fundamental obligation revealed by our principles and values. And that was adapted from the 2024 resolution from the UUA. During this service, at this time, what we do is we pause once again to bring joys and concerns to the community. And if you feel so moved to do so, you may come up and share and light a candle, or you can light a candle in silence. And then at the end, I will light a candle for all of those joys and concerns that remain unspoken.
Well, let's see, I had a friend from our old neighborhood, Chuck Bayuk, who I used to do fly fishing and pal around with, just passed away from prostate cancer. So he just, everything they tried, just never responded. So all you guys, watch your numbers.
I feel very lucky because I was given the opportunity in high school to be an exchange student and live in Brazil. And part of that blessing was that I now have two fathers, a host father in Brazil and my own father. And my host father turned 88 today. So this is a happy birthday to Jose.
I spent a very nice time with my son for about 11 days. And good for both of us.
This is one a concern and then a joy. First, as you know, I've been running lots, but one of our friends that we've spent many races with passed away fighting cancer. So that's for Dee Dee. And then our joy, we just got back from Alaska where we were able to...
Canada.
Alaska, Canada. Came back from Churchill, Manitoba, where we got to see polar bears and 17 different sightings of them. And then fox and ptarmigans, yeah, and a few other things. So anyway, cool. Very fun.
That's almost Alaska.
Where did that come
Oh, that one's not probably gonna work. So I have a joy. This one's for my son who got a new job. Yay! And this one is, well, Tony, my brother, had gastric bypass. So joy that he came through it fine, and concern that he continues to heal well.
Tony's also in with our church.
Yeah.
I have a concern.
Go ahead, Megan.
My younger daughter, Carrie, has applied for a job in England. And if she gets it, it doesn't involve teaching, and she really doesn't want the job, but she feels like she doesn't have a choice if she gets chosen. So that will mean both of the daughters are in England, and I'm not.
Well, I'm going to light a candle, and you'll hear just a little bit more about this, but some of you already know kind of the story. But 20 years ago this past week, my mother passed away suddenly, and I talk about that a little bit in my weekly blog from this past week, so just wanted to light that candle of memory. And now I'll light a candle for all these joys, those joys and concerns that remain unspoken. May we know that whatever befalls us in life, we are held in the loving embrace of this community. And now we say together, for all these joys and concerns, both spoken and unspoken, we hold you in our hearts. I have two readings today. On this occasion. The first one is called The Last Leaf. A snow-covered poplar bush with only a few golden leaves. Once, many gray autumns ago, I came upon this tree. The tree, a poplar, had dropped all of its leaves but for one, just one. Exactly one leaf remained near the topmost part of the tree, fluttering in the breeze like a little reddish-brown flag. All of the other leaves lay about the ground or had blown away. I stopped and looked and marveled at the sight. I wondered what the odds might be that I was the one person who happened to arrive at that one moment when but one leaf remained. What were the odds? I felt an instant kinship with the one leaf. I admired its stubbornness. I spoke quietly to it. Hang on. Never give up. Don't let go. I gazed at the last leaf for a time, though I did not stay to witness its falling. I did not want to witness its falling. The leaf was not ready to let go and drop silently to the ground, and neither was I, though I knew we both would, in time, let go. I praised the last leaf on that autumn day many years ago when I was still young. I walked on, and slowly, imperceptibly, a sense of calm came over me, a sense of acceptance, a sense of peace. The exuberance of summer is gone. Grand plans and high hopes give way to chilly reality. We loved as best we could. We've reaped as much as we could. We've traveled life's journey as far as we could for this season. We count our blessings as well as our losses. All leaves must fall. The circle of the year comes round. Our hemisphere tilts away from the sun. Green turns to gold. Life returns to the soil. Animals retreat. The nights grow longer. The natural world lies fallow. The season of letting go comes as it always comes, as winter will begin. The second reading is a poem called Samhain, which, if you aren't familiar with that term, most of you are, but it is the Wiccan and other pagan religion word for what we would typically call the New Year or Halloween. In the season, leaves should love, since it gives them leave to move. Through the wind towards the ground, they were watching while they hung. Legend says there is a seam stitching darkness like a name. Now when dying grasses veil earth from the sky in one last pale wave, as autumn dies to bring winter back, and then the spring, we who would die ourselves can peel back another kind of veil that hangs among us like thick smoke. Tonight, at last, I feel it shake. I feel the night stretching away, thousands long behind the days, till they reach the darkness where all of me is ancestor. I move my hand and feel a touch, move with me, and when I brush my own mind across another, I am with my mother's mother. Sure as footsteps in my waiting self, I find her, and she brings arms that carry answers for me, intimate, awaiting bounty. Carry me. She leaves this trail through a shudder of the veil and leaves like amber where she stays, a gift for her perpetual gaze. As I had briefly mentioned, and some of you know this information, this past week, I honored the memory of my mother who passed away suddenly at age 61, 20 years ago on October the 24th. I remember that day very interestingly. I was in one of my very first ministries, and I was at a youth retreat, actually here in Minnesota, and I was getting ready. It was a Friday night, and I was getting ready to get up the next day and try to entertain 350 youth, and we all know how that can be. So I was, preparing to go to bed early and get as much rest as I could, because 14, 15, 16-year-olds were going to challenge me at 8 a.m. on Saturday. But I received a call, and it was not the news that I had prepared myself to hear when I received the call from my father. And so I had to quickly gather whatever sense I had left in that horrible moment and get ready to go. And not only go from the retreat to my home, which was temporarily in New Brighton, Minnesota. This is before I went to Florida to begin my ministry there. And then figure out how to get plane tickets, the whole deal, because my family's from Missouri. And so I share that story because we probably all have similar types of stories, and if you don't have types of stories that are similar to that, you will have those stories someday. This time of year, and in pop culture today in the United States, we celebrate Halloween on October the 31st. But it is interesting to me that, and I'm one that tends to bring this kind of congruency to light for a lot of people when I teach my world religions class of how interesting it is that all of these earth-based traditions globally, which were originally completely disconnected, this is before air travel and trains and all that stuff, hundreds or even thousands of years ago, cultures around, especially in the northern hemisphere, took time this week to pause and remember those who've gone before. Now, interestingly enough, again, to continue that story, I've shared bits and pieces of that story about my mother's death. We were actually getting ready. My preaching professor at the seminary, and I never actually had her in a class because my preaching professor was the Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright, which was Barack Obama's pastor in Chicago, who came and was a visiting professor at United. So I had the honor to study under him, but I was very good friends with Chris Smith, who was our standard, regular, full-time preaching professor. She had gone on sabbatical and spent time in Mexico. And she had, the year before, really taken time to explore, let me get this right, the Dia de los Muertos. Okay, I speak French and English. Yeah, that's the best I can do for today. I wasn't enough coffee in that cup yet. And so this, if you don't know, is the Mexican tradition, and it actually permeates lots of different cultures throughout Central and South America, among other areas, the Day of the Dead, or more appropriately and more correctly, the Days of the Dead. Again, it was an indigenous tradition that started hundreds or thousands of years before we even kept records in what is now Mexico and other parts of Central America. And it is a time when they celebrate what we tend to say in more earth-based traditions is the thinning of the veil between the living and the dead. And that is where Halloween in pop culture comes from. And I am not diminishing Halloween at all because I absolutely love Halloween. In fact, most of you may know this already, but Halloween and Mardi Gras are the two gay high holy days, right? Because it's when you can do drag and not get looked at funny, right? And not that I did that, but I've done some crazy things in my time, but that's for later. Anyway, so Halloween is a big deal for us in pop culture, but it comes from the idea that we are close to this really mysterious, mystical, like kind of sometimes uneasy time where whether or not you believe in the actual, mystical nature of reality, of the thinning of the veil between the living and the dead, or you really just want to take time, because we should take more time than we probably do, to mourn and remember and honor our relatives, our ancestors, not just in our own families and our own legacies and cultures, but also the great people that have come before us working for social and environmental justice. All of that and everybody included in between. Now, it comes to no surprise that when the Christian church started to spread among cultures in Europe and around other areas of northern Africa and the ancient Near East, which is now what we call the Middle East, they said, oh, that's great, but we don't like the name that you have it, so we're going to call it All Souls Day. Or, in some cases, All Hallows Eve, because November the 1st, which is another part of this Days of the Dead in many cultures, is what is called All Saints Day. And it's where it's celebrated that all of the people that have come before us, who've been leaders, that we recognize that we've gotten to where we are because people worked hard. It's kind of like some wise person at some political rally this week said that women weren't given the right to vote. Women and others fought for the right to vote. And so these are parts of the movements that we hold dear, that we should pause and honor, not just for the sake of what has happened to get us where we are, and yes, there's more work to be done, we all acknowledge that, but also to think about the people who come before us who fought so hard to get us to this point. I am often now, I caught off guard when I say things like, you know what, when I was your age, I didn't know I was going to sound like my mother one day, but you know, I do, and I'm very proud of that sometimes. But I catch a lot of the students that I had in undergrad saying things like, oh, well, there's just, you know, we just don't have enough rights, and, you know, I just don't know why we are where we are, and I don't know how people could vote like this. And I say to them, you know, when I was your age, we didn't have what you have. You know, I really do sound like my mother. So wherever you are, Mom, I know I'm channeling you right now. But that is a way, one of the million ways that we can honor our ancestors and the people that have come before us. And as I said, this is a presentation that's kind of a two-part because I'm taking All Souls Day, Samhain, and Dia de los Muertos, and other stuff. I'm gonna finish that. But there's many more traditions. You can go Google it and have a great time. Then next Sunday, what we'll do is we'll explore the All Saints part, which is all part of it. So it's kind of like a week-long sort of time for us to reflect. I'm inviting you into that at least. And part of it is because all of us recognize that in our society, we don't give ourselves and others often the permission to grieve as long as we need to when we lose someone or we lose something. It's like, okay, I remember when I first started teaching, they said, well, you get 3 bereavement days. I said, oh, I'm glad you can put a number on how many days it's going to take me to grieve. That's kind of how it is. So I invite you into at least a week-long time of maybe, this is what I try to do, starting this Sunday until next Sunday, inclusive of both Sundays, spend some time each day thinking about those things that have gone on before you and the people that have caused those things to happen or helped cause those things to happen, and honor them. Honor the people that are part of your own legacy, the people without whom you would not be here today, and the people who have, you know, done things like my mom did. She said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it was a weird answer for most kids. I was 6 years old and I said, I want to be a preacher. Little did I know. But she knew. So I remember that, and again, this is how I tell stories to remember, and I mean, many of you do too. There's all kinds of ways we can honor, but this story is always interesting. We had this extra room in our house. We called it the blue room because it was blue. And it was blue when we bought this house. And it was a small room, and my mom said, you know what? I'm going to play a little game with you. I'm going to set up some chairs, and you can get up and preach to them. Act like there's people there in the chairs. And my mom, she didn't know I caught her, stood outside the door watching me, and a little tear came down her face. But, you know, I didn't want to call attention to that because I was still trying to understand what the heck was going on. And so I think that during this time, it can give us some energy that we don't typically get to spend some time with. Because nobody likes to talk about death, and nobody likes to talk about dying, and nobody likes to talk about those sometimes real dark moments in our lives, and those times of disappointment, and the times of tragedy. But we do need to honor those moments and give ourselves the permission to remember and to don't give up like that leaf. Don't give up on the future, because the future has come from the past and is coming from the present. So what I like to do on this time and journey, and I'm trying to make this a little shorter so we'll have a time to even have a reflection if you're so moved to do so. One of the rituals that I have been a part of this was at a UU church in Florida, and it was actually on Halloween, or I think it was on November the 1st, but anyways, it was the celebration of Samhain. One of the things they did is they took a bowl of water, such as this one, that I just so happen to have up here, and then a bowl of salt. I got that salt from a friend. And as we were moved, we took a pinch of salt, and then we just put it in the water and watched it dissolve. And I have a little, just so happen to have a little thing that I wrote about this to kind of give you an image of what I'm inviting you into. During our reflection time, while a song is playing, and it may go into some silence, which is perfectly fine because we'll end in some silence, which is another thing we don't take time to do in our culture, is put our phones down, turn off whatever media is going on, and just be silent for a moment and listen to the universe. Well, I really launched into a sermon there, but we'll go back to this script. We're going to pause to begin this week-long journey that I'm inviting you into, if you so choose to do this, to honor the memory of the people who have been important and continue to be important for each of us. Not only from our personal lives and families, but also the course of human history. Those very important names and the people that, like Father Gutierrez, that I talk about on my blog this past week, whose sudden death this past week, the same day as the anniversary of my mother's death, his passing is one of the greatest legacies of theological education and the future of theology. We're going to honor those contributions that people who are responsible for these major movements, as well as the people that are responsible for us. We've lost parents, grandparents, siblings, close friends, other parts of our family, other parts of our circle. And all of these people have been an interconnected group and are part of what we call a web of loss. We may not be able to have time to offer a eulogy for each and every person that we honor today or during the course of this week, but we can take time to pause and pay respect. In our own way, we remember how they have impacted our lives and share our love for them with each other in this community. We broaden this time of reflection and memoriam to include anyone throughout history who has affected us and this community through their work for justice. So just in a few moments, as I did, picking up a pinch of salt and putting it in the water, and at the end, I will, after service, I'm going to stir it a little bit until the salt all dissolves, and then we'll pour it. Those of you that like that kind of closure, I do, so I invite you after service, and then come back in and talk about the storage, to follow me out at the end, and we'll pour it into the ground. I don't know why, but I just kind of like that stuff. When you do that, I'm just acknowledging that what we're doing is remembering silently this outward sign of an inward grace, which, by the way, an outward sign of an inward grace, for those people that are interested in theology, that's called a sacrament. And yeah, I'm going to call this a sacrament, because it is a sacred act to remember those people. Salt and water are reminiscent of the tears that we cry in our loss, our love and our grief. They are a release of pressure. We often feel better after we've shed a tear. But sometimes all we need to do is intentionally pause and mourn and remember. We hope that through today's intentional time that we all can experience the healing, continued healing, that we need through this symbolic act that I'm calling a sacrament. So again, as the salt dissolves in the water, we can't really see it anymore. But it's still with us. It's still there. Just like we carry our loved ones and those other key figures in history in our hearts, even as we don't see them physically in our lives daily or anymore. So as the music begins, when you are ready, I invite you to come up and take this pinch of salt and deposit it into the water. Take your time. Again, if the music ends and there's still silence, that's okay. And then we'll end in a few moments of silence and then have some time for reflection if you feel moved to contribute to that. And since my first one was for you to see how to do it, I'm going to do my pinch of salt and then. And as we have a brief moment of silence further, I invite you to take a deep breath and feel the energy of our ancestors. Now I invite you to contribute a reflection if you like. This is the time during our service where we open up the floor.
I don't know if you know this or not, maybe you do, but John Lewis wanted to be a preacher from when he was very young, and he used to preach to the chickens.
I did not know that. Thank you, you just made my day.
I think it's harder to think way back in time when you're not associated with a place. I feel like my life has been all over the place. I've never really belonged to a place, and of course in this country, my ancestry has not been there for all that long, right? And so, you know, I went to England, okay, and it was just so neat because the people that were living there, their ancestors had been living there for thousands of years before our common era. And to me, it's so much easier to feel that whole ancestry and all the people that have come before when you have that. And I'm envious of them.
In your reading, you talked about, there was a phrase about a mother's mother, and that got me thinking about my mom's mom, who I have very few memories of, other than when she was really failing and still lived in our house and would call for my mom to come and help her in the middle of the night or whatever. But then I pictured what it must have been like when I was an infant, when she was younger and more vibrant, and I had this image of her holding an infant, me, just kind of flashed into my brain. That's like, never even had that picture before, so it was kind of neat.
I love the description or the analogy that you said about the salt being in the water, like our ancestors, even though they've passed, they're still there, and I like that connection.
In Chinese, ancestor we translate to something like a previous generation, and the previous, the word, the pronunciation is the same as money in Chinese. So it's exactly the same pronunciation. So that occurred to me, there's a lot of wealth and, you know, rich elements we inherited from our previous generation. So that idea just, oh, that's the same sound. I never realized that. Yeah, thank you for letting me to recall the lesson from my Chinese ancestors. Say, yeah, count your blessing, count your wealth.
You know, you were talking about people in, you know, maybe not related to us, but people who have worked on social justice that came before, that we used, the saints of social justice. And all I could think about was scientists. People, humans with curiosity. I thought, first one, Louis Pasteur, you know, and the guy Lister, you know, like Listeria, and, you know, Listeria, all those people who figured out what made us sick and
saved our
lives.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's also something, I didn't mention this because I was trying to keep things a little bit brief so we could have this time, but many of you know the story about how whenever I came back from my mother's funeral, I looked out the big picture window in my apartment, and there was a bald eagle that just flew like very close to the window. And this morning was a rough morning for me. We all just have rough mornings sometimes. I just admit that. It's just one of those things. And so as I got off the highway, there was a bald eagle that flew over. Like, I mean, probably not 15 feet above my car. And I was like, well, I guess I'm doing the right thing, no matter how hard it is to do it today. And those symbols are really important for people.
Just to go on your eagle story, when I was doing shamanic work, and eagle was one of my power animals. And whenever I met with eagle, his message was, rise above it, see it from a higher perspective, your whole life and everything.
And hang on.
And hang on.
Well, I thank you so much for your contribution. I hope that this ritual and this time has been meaningful. And again, feel free to continue that conversation at other times. It doesn't have to be the end of that today. May it be a beginning. And so I invite you now to join us and rise as you're able in hymn number 57, number 5-7.
We're going to play through it, so as soon as you have your hymnals and everything.
Before we listen to this wonderful postlude, I would offer the insight of, once again, how important it is for us to pause and take the time and allow ourselves to remember and even grieve again if we need to, and to move forward, hanging on, knowing that one day we'll all let go. But for now, joy comes in the morning. You may be seated.
We're going to sing sending you light. You have that in your hymnals or?
Oh,
Oh, it's up on the screen. Okay, so I'll just introduce it and then we'll sing it. It's 4 verses.
And so I've already given the insight, but if anybody is interested in following me outside, it's interestingly still kind of warm. We give thanks for that, and I'll pour this into the crowd. But don't forget to come back and talk about storage.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna forget this, Mr.
So nice. Well, glad you guys came.
What?
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Lots of music, which is
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
We have a guest book.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
And are interested in talking to you, sign in.
Here's the most important part.
We also have a MailChimp.
It's just like, I'm like, I know, you know,
Triple stack. Well, I think it boils off.
Hi. I'm Stacy.
I remember.
Steph.